Progressive Seattle leads the nation. We're number one in office rent declines as vacancies skyrocket. What's that look like? Let's get into it. Here we go. Why it matters. Seattle's office slump is reshaping the region's commercial real estate landscape. You got to remember, everything that happens in the downtown core impacts everybody else because so much of the tax revenue dollars comes from the commercial core. And as those vacancies keep going up and as rents come down, it's an indication that there's less demand for downtown core. That's not the direction you want to go. You don't want to be numero uno in having your rents decline. Not a good sign, with long-term implications for property values, city tax revenues, and the future of downtown. So when you got a lunatic, Sean Scott, he's one of our state representatives. He ran against Andrea Suarez and won handily because he is a Democratic Socialist of America, and he looks just like Let's Go Brandon Johnson. And he has some ideas that I think even surpass Let's Go Brandon Johnson in basically stupidity. Just doesn't understand how things work. You're going to see a little bit of that. But what I wanted to show you here is that overall vacancy in the downtown Seattle office market reached 34.6% in the second quarter of 2025. Call it, let's round up, right? We always round up. 35%. 1 out of every 3 spaces in downtown Seattle, buildings, however you want to metric it, empty. Now, Mayor Bruce Harrell was doing a pretty darn good job of kind of getting Seattle downtown core cleaned up. But now we've got a socialist, and she's basically, as mayor, Katie Wilson has said, we're not sweeping anymore because it's inhumane. And she has no clue what she's doing. She's never had a position of any kind of responsibility of, a city the size with the budget of $9 billion and 41 different departments. She's never run even a taco stand, right? Just no real life skills. But hey, Seattle's voters said, let's put her in because she said, everything's going to get cheaper under my watch. And everything as a socialist, as you know, will get more expensive. So we've got 35% office vacancies going up, office rents declining. What could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? And so on top of that, we've got this new state payroll tax that would force jobs out of Washington. So while we've got this backdrop, think of that backdrop, all right? Seattle, numero uno in categories you don't want to be numero uno in. You've got big cities like Chicago. You've got big cities like Portland. You've got big cities like San Francisco that are all struggling. But they're struggling because businesses have left because street conditions have gotten horrific on top of a tax environment that is not conducive to business. There was a video of Tim Boyle. He's one of the founders of Columbia Sporting Goods in Portland. And he basically came right out and said, this is an absolute train wreck. Portland and Multnomah County are an absolute train wreck. And Seattle's been working its way out, trying to work its way out. And Bruce Harrell, I give him credit for what he did. Didn't fix everything. I don't think anybody could. Are there areas of Seattle that have just been left alone, like the International District, just to have a bunch of drugs overrun them? Yeah, they have. But the downtown core, and we're talking about the downtown core, right? Seattle's downtown core has been cleaned up a little bit. San Francisco's downtown core has been cleaned up a little bit. Neither one of them are done. Neither one of them are good, but they're better, right? They are better. And San Francisco, markedly better than Seattle. But now what you've got is you've got this state payroll tax. And that's what we're going to focus on because we already know what happens when you put a city payroll tax on big business. Amazon moves 10,000 employees to Bellevue and said, go F yourself, Seattle. We don't need you. we're not paying a tax. And big business will do the same exact darn thing in the state of Washington. If Washington brings on a payroll tax for the whole state, that's what we're working with. And even Bellevue Mayor Lynn Robinson has said, I don't think this is a good idea. This is not a good idea. So you've got moderate Democrats, and that's who runs Bellevue. You can't have any Republican leadership, really, in the state of Washington. It's too far blue. It's too far libtard, right? It's too progressive. They'd never vote in a Republican here because, orange man bad. And as our state gets bluer, our taxes just continue to rise, and we keep pushing out business, just push out business, because we're more concerned with the school teachers leaving the state than we are big business like Microsoft, like Amazon, like Meta. The list just goes on and on and on. When it's their tax dollars that are paying the school teachers' salaries. But, those are minor details that we don't want to get hung up on. This is catastrophic. Seattle payroll tax revenues $47 million short as jobs leave the city. So we've already got an established actions have consequences here in Seattle, but we don't really pay any attention to that. And it's because right now, the United States is on a socialism run. We're just, socialism's going to solve everything. And all of these socialists have run on a campaign of, I'm going to reduce, the cost of this. I'm going to reduce the cost of childcare. I can't believe how expensive childcare is. Somebody told me the other day, or I was reading an article where it was like $3,000 per child in Seattle for childcare. I know Katie Wilson was getting $2,200 a month for her kid, our new mayor, from her parents towards childcare. And I thought, God, that's a lot of money. $3,000. I mean, you got to be making some real money to afford childcare, right? And you know what? It doesn't have to be that way, because in other states and other cities, it's not that way, because you haven't had Democratic rule. Democrats have run Washington state for 40 years. And this is what ends up happening. California, it's even longer than that, right? Oh no, I think you had the Terminator in there. You had the Terminator in there. Was he really a Republican? Kinda, right? So, state of Washington, you've got this thing where we know what pushes out big business. We know what pushes out Amazon, and it's a payroll tax. And so what do? Yeah, we're going to try and lob in there a state payroll tax. But let's just take a little look at this one. This is catastrophic. Seattle payroll tax revenues, 47 million short as jobs leave the city. They're leaving. The payroll tax is short because businesses have already left. They've already left. They took their toys and they got the heck out of Seattle. Now, with socialists painting a target on the entire state of Washington, as they're doing in New York, Mamdani, you got the same thing. It's going to take businesses and push businesses from Bellevue out of Washington state. Guaranteed. Because why would they stay and just take it? Why would you stay and just take the abuse? Yeah, you wouldn't. You're just like, I don't think so. Will Boeing move out? Probably. I mean, they've already moved a bunch of their stuff to what? Kansas? Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell released his payroll expense tax reports for 2024 Tuesday, and its projections came up nearly $50 million short. Today's announcement that pet revenues and collected in 2024 were $47 million short, and projected requires action to ensure our budget remains balanced, Harrell said. Harrell said that his 2025 budget proposal was based on projections that, didn't really work out. It just didn't really kind of go that way. What people haven't realized yet, but soon will, is that the sharp drop in payroll expense tax means jobs are leaving Seattle, Jason Rantz explained. The whole point of the payment tax was to squeeze free money out of businesses because the city arrogantly assumed it held all the cards. Hey, you're here, you're Amazon, you're associated with Bellevue, you won't leave? Even though Jeff Bezos just up and left, he sold his $63 million home and moved to Florida. Well, what did PET actually do? What did the payroll employment tax actually do? Pushed Amazon jobs to Bellevue, where I sit. And here's another thing. This is one of those things where you're like, maybe that impacts things. Maybe this is already writing on the wall for Washington State. Meta abandons expansion rights to 5 building sites in the Spring District, just about a half mile up the road from me on Bell-Red Road. You hang a lefty on Bell-Red Road out of my office, and you hang a righty on 124th, and that's the Spring District, this big commercial area. Meta's got 5 sites in there, and it has decided, no, I don't think we're going to build any more office space. Maybe they're pulling out. Who knows? Maybe they're pulling out of Washington State. Maybe they don't want to have any more concentration of office space that they're building and developing in Washington State. Could that be? I mean, why wouldn't it be? So Seattle's payroll tax could do the exact same thing that Meta is thinking will happen in Washington State. Hey, if you get a state payroll tax on employees over $125,000, state's going to tax us 5% on that. That is what is proposed. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Yeah, businesses leave, like Meta. Just say, nope, I don't think so. Now, it might have been a decision on Meta's part to basically, hey, we don't need any more office space. There's plenty of that. We'll let the developer go ahead and put some apartments up here. We're not really sure what's going on there. But the fact that Meta's pulling out of Bellevue even is kind of an indication, okay, not all is well. Clearly, we know things aren't going great in Seattle, but is that going to expand to the rest of the state? That's the consideration. So what did the payroll and employee tax actually do? It pushed Amazon jobs to Bellevue, and now maybe Bellevue. Companies leaving Bellevue, going to another state. It kept employers working from home and out of Seattle and helped fuel layoffs at companies hit hardest by the tax, like Expedia, like Amazon, like Meta. They've all got office space in downtown. Everybody's got office space in downtown. Microsoft, just jobs are leaving Seattle. Even Harrell acknowledged this decrease in revenue is aligned with recent reports of major employers moving thousands of high-paying jobs out of Seattle to other cities in our region. They're coming to Bellevue. There's no other cities they're really going to. Nobody wants to be anywhere else. They just don't. Bellevue's an epic, it's an epic place for people to go, but for employers to move their employees, because it's so safe and it's just such a no-brainer, and they can shop at Bellevue Square if that's your thing. I'm not really much of a big shopper. I want to spend some time here going through, there's some crazy funny footage here. And by crazy funny, I mean, we got Sean Scott. He's the state representative, ran against 𝗪𝗓𝗓 Suarez of We Heart Seattle. I've been out with her, on multiple, hey, we're doing an outreach to homeless encampments, so you guys can see that footage. I released one not too long ago, maybe a week or so ago, no, a couple weeks ago, whatever, just during Thanksgiving break. 𝗪𝗓𝗓 Suarez went down to the press conference in Olympia, where this knucklehead, Sean Scott, he's a first-term legislator from Seattle, and he is proposing this massive $2 billion or so a year state payroll tax, because we've already seen what the Seattle city payroll tax has done. It's pushing businesses out. They have less revenue because businesses are getting pushed out because of a payroll tax. So, hey, that worked out so great. Let's do some more progressive revenue, and we'll just do it on a whole statewide basis. Let's just tax the F out of the whole state. We'll tax Washington in its entirety, because they tax and spend. That's what the Democrats do. And particularly Sean Scott, who is a Democratic Socialist of America, but let's watch some footage. This is some epic stuff from Brandy Cruz here. She was one of the few reporters at this news conference, at this press conference, and she asked some really tough questions, and nobody else really did. And Sean Scott, let's just watch it. This is some pretty funny stuff.
He was trying to make me feel unimportant, but didn't succeed in that. But the obvious question I have for him is, we don't need to guess what will happen with this tax because Seattle already has a payroll tax. They call it the Jumpstart tax. They passed it in 2020. And what has happened? Well, immediately after they passed it, Amazon said, okay, if you're going to punish us and single us out for taxation, we're going to move jobs to Bellevue. So Amazon moved 10,000 jobs to Bellevue. And what happened to the revenue that Seattle was counting on from the Jumpstart tax? Ooh, just crashed and burned. And so now they're like, oh, well, we got to find other ways to tax people because they moved the job. So Amazon made a threat. They made good on the threat. So there's no reason to believe that if you don't take that tax, spread it statewide, that companies like now Microsoft that are threatening to move jobs, if you pass it, will do exactly that. And so I asked Sean Scott what he thinks about that. Do you understand that there is a likelihood that businesses could decide Microsoft just said they would?
I gotta laugh. The way she couched it. Do you understand, Brandy? That was classic. Do you understand? Because I'm getting the feeling you don't really understand the absolute basics of what you're talking about. And he doesn't. Look at him. He's a mini Let's Go Brandon Johnson. He really is. But he's socialist. So he's got this, it's so unintelligent is what it is, because it doesn't make any sense. But let's keep going.
Sure. To move jobs out of the state. And are you concerned about that?
Right. So we have a situation with many major corporations, in particular Amazon and Microsoft, which I think one of which you had mentioned, have already been shedding jobs. They didn't need tax policy to be an impetus to invest in artificial intelligence.
Okay. You got to follow the bobbleheads. Brandy talks about this later. The bobbleheads. What's up with that? You're headbanging? I don't know. It's nutty. But these are the losers. These are the socialist losers actually supporting this nonsense. These people work for, say, an Amazon or a Microsoft. And when their jobs get moved out, you will hear them boo-hoo-hoo because my job got cut. Amazon doesn't care about me. Well, because you supported this massive statewide employment tax, and the business said, no, we're not paying that. We're out of here. And your job left with them. So, these people behind Sean Scott here are mentally retarded. They just are. They don't get how life works. They don't get how real business works. And that's why they've got these ridiculous signs, healthcare, higher ed, housing. Well, you've already got that. You don't need an employment tax on the whole state. You've already got that money. You've just got this budget that's exploding. $9.4 billion in new taxes. But Sean Scott, he's out there. Yeah, this is greatest concept ever.
Intelligence, and the goal of that technology is to divest from human labor. We have seen many times in the state legislature the threat of jobs being relocated hung over the head of state lawmakers. Most famously, perhaps, in the example of Boeing, where they shook the state legislature down for the single largest corporate welfare package that was granted by a state government in the history of the republic. And then they moved the jobs anyway. I am much more concerned about working people who are going to be displaced, working people who might move from Washington because they can't afford childcare, because they can't afford the cost of medicine, because this is not a good place to try to start or raise a family or go to school. The perspective that you are speaking from, frankly, is very well represented in the state legislature by the major corporations that have spent millions over the years lobbying the state legislature, and they expect a return on investment. Those aren't the entities that I center in my policymaking. I believe that they're spoken for enough in Olympia.
Would you like them to leave?
I mean, he's more concerned about the school teacher. Yeah, but who creates the taxes to pay that person's salary? He just this is insanity. This is the socialist insanity, and you're seeing this across the country. All of a sudden, this is a moment for socialism. And it's frankly, it is just frightening because these people are dumb. They are brain dead as far as, hey, how does this system actually work? Well, I'm more concerned, when that person loses their job because the budget got cut, because you created a situation where all the businesses leave. How are you going to explain that to him? What are you going to say to him? Sorry, we tried. We tried socialism for the 967th time, and God damn, it failed. Who would have known? I mean, we just thought that doing the same thing, try again, would work. It didn't. Shocker. I'm going to go back a second because I want to hear what Brandy's whole question here. So here we go.
These that I center in my policymaking, I believe that they're spoken for enough in Olympia.
Would you like them to leave, Representative Scott? Do you think that Amazon and Microsoft are a net good for our state?
Say more about that. When you say net good, what do you mean?
Do you think they...
Now, I keep interrupting, but there's a whole bunch more stuff at the end that we're not going to watch. Brandy, I think Brandy was under the impression that he, wanted clarification on this question. I don't think he understood the question. He didn't understand net good, and he bought himself time and then literally said, tell me more about that. He didn't understand that term. I don't think. That was what ran through my head is this guy doesn't even know net good. It's like, hey, are these companies at the end of the day, are they providing good to the community or not? And he had to wonder about that. He had to think about that. Who does that? People who don't have any life experience, people who don't have any business experience. Hey, at the end of the day, all the jobs and all the benefit to the economy, you're trying to push them out. Where are you going with this, bud? Where are you going with this? That's what Brandy is asking.
They contribute and add more value to our state than they detract.
I think that workers, were they to collectivize, could come up with something like Amazon on their own, but that Amazon has a very difficult time providing the value that you would like to see in reverse. In other words, I think that...
What? See, what are you talking about? Honestly, this is what we're working with in Washington State. This guy is mentally challenged. You think that a group of workers can crowdsource an Amazon? Well, why haven't they? How have we not seen that before? Because that seems like a genius plan. And then everybody would have ownership of an Amazon. Why has that never worked? Well, because socialism doesn't work, you numbnut. Yeah, this is an example of why Washington State is going right down the crapper, because we hire this kind of numbnut instead of Andrea Suarez, who's literally taken millions of pounds of garbage out of our parks, period, and put hundreds of people into treatment. I've been there when she does outreach, right? I mean, this isn't brain surgery, but this guy makes things so complex because he's like, well, if we do this, and I think the workers of the world unite could get together and create an Amazon. Since when? How? Oh, they couldn't. They can't. It takes innovation. It takes somebody with an enormous set of balls to go out there and create an Amazon. You want to say Jeff Bezos is lucky? You want to say that, Mark Zuckerberg is lucky? You want to say that Bill Gates is lucky? I don't care how they got there, but at some point in time, they were the king lion, and they made it happen. And those guys, the exception of Zuckerberg, they're from here in Amazon is created in Bellevue, 3 miles from where I'm sitting, in a garage in Bellevue. Microsoft headquarters is a couple of miles that direction. I'm on Bell Red Road, and Microsoft's in Redmond, the red part. So this guy here saying, well, I think they could. No, they couldn't. And you know why we know that is true? Because they never have, and they never will. And they'll never create a company like that collectively through socialism. Just it's mentally, it's challenged. You're just like, you don't understand how life really works. You don't understand how business actually works. But hey, this is entertaining, but unfortunately, this is a sad sort of entertaining because Brandy Cruz is basically just picking him apart. And he's like,
working people getting together, forming unions, coming out and lobbying for policies such as this could create something that resembled an Amazon corporation without that added layer of exploitation. But I don't know that Amazon's leadership, such as it is, would be able to do something like that on its own. So I'm much more concerned with the social good of people that are in Washington state that want to be here, that believe in Washington state enough to fight for well-funded public programs. And they can speak for themselves through other channels if they would like to.
Wow, where do I even start with that? So he seems indifferent to the idea that Amazon and Microsoft would move jobs out of the state. And he represents the area of Seattle that includes Amazon. So this is a pretty shocking thing, especially when he said, my concern is with the people of the state. And he even says in there, which I thought was funny, and I asked him about later, that Washington is not a good place to start a family and go to school. And I thought, whoa, I kind of agree with you there. And it's interesting, but I mean, who's been in charge of Washington for 40 years? Democrats. So he threw his fellow Democrats right under the bus. But first of all, the fact that he has to think.
But he's not smart enough to understand that. That's the problem. He's not smart enough to get it. He doesn't get it. Nor does he care because he's on this socialist roll. Hey, progressive taxation. This is going to be the greatest thing ever. Ugh. And what's going to happen? Got to push business out. We've already seen it. I just ran through the numbers. Seattle's got the greatest lowering of commercial rents in the nation. Numero uno.
Stop and think about whether Amazon and Microsoft are a net good for our state is insane. All the free stuff, quote unquote free, that he wants for people, that he's promising to people, Microsoft and Amazon pay for most of it. And so what do you think the quality of life is going to be for the people you claim to care about, the working people, if they leave? And then to suggest, I mean, this just shows his lack of really experience or knowledge about how the economy works or how businesses work. The idea that he thinks workers could form a collective and do the same thing Amazon does is just about the dumbest thing I have ever heard, truly, but it just shows the mindset there. So there's that whole issue of, do you care if Amazon and Microsoft leave, and, what are the implications? But then on a broader scale, there's this issue of, do you not understand how much our state budget and how much our taxes have ballooned in recent years? Because he keeps saying, while he's down there, and why we need this new tax, that we can't fund very basic things.
Counting on increasingly unreliable federal grants to fund basic services like public safety and climate infrastructure is no longer an option.
First of all, climate infrastructure isn't a basic thing, and you're claiming to be worried about public safety when you, for years, have been a police abolitionist. So spare me your concern that we can't fund basic public safety needs. But the core issue I have with this is this. Our budget has grown exponentially over the years.
We solve many of the problems that are posed in front of us. And so that's what this is about today.
How can you call it austerity, though, when it's ballooned 100?
We've heard quite a lot from
70%.
This person. I just want to make sure that we have others with the ability to ask questions as well. And
you know what? I'm going to end it here. But if you want to watch this segment, this is an absolutely great segment, and it kind of encapsulates what's going on with Washington politics. This is a $2 billion a year tax on Washington employers. And look at how few people are here. When I first saw this scene, I'm like, that's Brandy Cruz. And why isn't there just an absolute horde of reporters around her? Because nobody's covering it. Because people are like, oh yeah, another tax. It should be great. Greatest thing ever. And she comes in and asks some questions to the point where Let's Go Brandon Johnson gets pretty worked up and starts, you got to watch the segment. It is entertaining. He literally tells Brandy Cruz that he's going to answer for some of the other people behind him making comments. It's some fantastic footage, and it's indicative of the state of Washington state politics being basically brain dead. That's what we're working with. We're working with a bunch of brain dead people who don't understand how it works, and they're concerned about things that aren't cause and effect. Like businesses pay taxes. The teacher, they take a paycheck, right? They pay a little bit in taxes, but a tiny percentage compared to the businesses you're pushing out that are already leaving, because we know Seattle has the greatest declining rents in the nation. But don't look at that. Just go ahead and layer on some more taxes and it should be the greatest thing ever, right? Wild stuff. If it wasn't reality, it would be something you would make up. You can't make up this level of stupidity. But this is what Seattle wants. So give it to the people of Seattle. Podcasts for days, weeks, months, years. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe. Hit that notification bell. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Bye for now.